time and a half through again. White, the guy who's in the lead, I believe, hit both the livestock and the fruit. Now, he doesn't have a whole hell of a lot of fruit. The corn might actually be worth more, right? 2, 4, 6. Yeah, worth a lot more, possibly, definitely. But both were kind of slashed. Fruit, low roll. Livestock, I got half value, you know, so not the kind of money that I needed to get the big roll. Mostly around, somebody got some good money. Yellow got some good money off of this. They have not doubled, but 50 acres for the wheat, and that pulled in, I don't know, about 20. Brown over here was worried about maybe making their way out of the spring zone and had some extra cash on hand. I dropped 20,000 on some wheat or grain acreage, and there's one good thing. If you buy before you roll the dice, you might end up, at this point in the game where there's no OTB cards left, you might end up getting your card back. Reminds me a little bit of suicide attacks in Kingmaker, where once the Nobles deck is wiped out, you can kind of sit there and say, well, I can attack with this guy who has nothing associated with him, do an assassination attempt, and yes, I'll be dead, but that just means there'll be something for me to draw, and maybe I'll take something out that's important. I got a near maximal run off their corn harvest, and I forgot to draw a Farmer's Fate. I took everybody else's turn and drew one there, which would have been theirs. Windy Spring, don't get your weed. Hold this card through wheat harvest for this year. Well, this is interesting because this card makes sense if you're in the spring. But at what point does it stop making sense? Is it a go away at Christmas vacation, in which case it's not going to affect white, and that's how I'm just going to take it, because it's the only reasonable way I can evaluate that card? Or, you know, is the fact that I passed the wheat harvest already mean that's what's coming up? Well, it says this year, so screw it. So if you get a Farmer's Fate there. So green managed to get the bonus of a $10,000 hay, 10 acres of hay at $10,000, which, you know, basically is a $10,000 profit if you have the cash, and he certainly did. But with White's big hit here, and I mean maximal means that, like, I got $40,000. So I want to take a quick, another calculation of just how much White has on hand. This is going to rotate shortly. So White's holdings are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 140, 165, 185,000 right there. I think I may have it. 195, 205, 210, 220, 230, 240, 250 plus. I'm going to declare an audit whenever I'm supposed to do that. I have the 250,000. I believe I've accumulated $250,000. I call for an audit. An audit is conducted when I hit Christmas. So this video is going to be really, really short because there's almost no way that White's going to fail here. But we'll go around once more, and it ends when White passes Christmas, which again, like many games, gives a weird sort of advantage, but it's tiny, right? To the first player, you know, just in terms of people on this side of White get an extra turn. Of course, an extra turn might lose your money instead of gaining it, but if you're in the 250 range, it's probably a bonus. Red have gone, neither one got anything. He got flung back to January and he made $3,000-$4,000. That means white's up. We'll roll this because, oh, the tension, who knows what could happen. I mean, it's possible that a big enough hit could conceivably happen. I don't know. I haven't seen one, but it's possible, I guess. Okay, I get $1,000 extra, so I get $7,000. We counted the money recently. I don't feel like doing a full recount on everyone. This is the only player who was at all possible of being over the 250, so we know that's happened. Second, third, you know, again, we kind of know who holds those positions from the last play. These two players did poorly. This guy did really well. Well, luck is a huge factor in this. There's no question about that. What made white do well in terms of their buildup? Lot of the staples. Built those up early, it looks like. Also was able to buy all their cows kind of at once, which is a nice thing. Being able to get, like, you know, 40 cows on the field in one play means that you're not going to suffer like you would if you were putting them out 10 at a time or whatever, or 20 or whatever. Other people who did well. Well, nobody invested in fruit early. That's one of the issues. So, like, two players have some fruit. They're both doing fine. It hasn't hurt them terribly, but fruit, like the livestock, are more volatile markets and are a little bit more dangerous in general, especially with that kill off your cows. But you only lose 20 cows. You don't lose the cows off here, so at least there's that. Like, I was afraid those guys died off, and then the lease markers would be wrong and everything. But yeah, if we look, you know, this investment was really good early because the money off of other people's tractor or harvester costs were nice, but that's on yellow. Yellow's doing fine. Blue, who's also doing fine, though, didn't invest in one of those. If we look at the couple of people who were doing the worst, they were kind of later comers to it. The second tractor, I think the third harvester, but I'm not sure. Nah, I think he had the second harvester, honestly. You know, it's a place to tuck money aside. It might save you a little bit. It might gain you a little bit, not just off of things that other people hit where their operating expenses say to give the money, but also places where there's farmer's fate, there's spaces on the board that give you a bonus for having those resources available to you. But I think, you know, in a large sense, I think the biggest thing is get your get your hay large enough that you're not losing money off of it, and probably get your wheat up there because the Wheaties produce a bigger hit overall. But here's the problem. Your hay gets hit 4 times in the season. Your wheat and corn only get hit twice. So, you know, and the corn is highly unlikely. Now, granted, the other hay seasons are unlikely as well. It's that first hay cutting and the wheat harvest that are the ones you can really kind of count on hitting every time. Apple looks like it should get hit a lot. You know, it's pretty big. But the thing is, you've got a couple of places where you could get jumped around the board. There's a space in the wheat harvest that does it. And then there's also like farmer's fate cards that'll throw you around the board or whatever. And you just, like in Monopoly, you don't necessarily hit the stuff on this side of the board as much as the things over here. Well, there's no property, no value to be gained here. The thing is, though, you've got the cherries here. That's 3 spaces. That's not bad. That comes in there. Livestock is the biggest if. You're least likely to make anything off the livestock, but on the other hand, it means that you're less likely to draw the operating expenses off of it. I don't know why. One of the reasons I like the livestock better than the fruit is quite simply you can invest with very little money and get yourself a couple of cows. You know, so that becomes tempting. And then once you do that and you have larger amounts of money, it's harder to put it into the fruit when you can maybe buy, you know, a lease to one of these things that is going to get you the same kind of cow value. It'll keep you'll be making more money off the livestock when you do hit it. Problem with cattle though, one, having to pay. They do have some big hits associated with them, maybe even bigger than the fruit does. And another factor against the cattle is when you go with these. So this is another reason for the cattle is that these things are a limited resource. There's like 2 cards for each one. If you have one of the 2 cards, and I didn't know how many there were until I ran through the deck basically. But if you have one of the 2 cards and not both of them, well, you've got a resource that will not come back if the other player grabs it. The only way you'll get it is by making some kind of trade or deal with other player. So there's an incentive to get those cattle out there. That's something you will not be able to get again. Is that terrible? Well, nobody ran out of OTBs. This guy only has 1 though, and it's useless. So I guess somebody did run out. The other 4 players did not run out. Note, the guy who won is the one who ran out. He would have been starting to pay off his debt, I guess, because just nothing better to do with all that cash. However, he has enough to win the game. Maybe not. I didn't count the 50 out. Here I am ending the game, am I not? Well, I don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 140, 165, 185. Forgot that 50. That's why we didn't do it. I think we're quitting anyway. 185, 190, 200, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Yeah, I mean, I'm like 30 short, but screw it. Well, he just got like hugely penalized for miscounting. He'd be losing, I don't know what it is, like 25% of his net assets. Okay. Oops. Anyway, you cut it, ending this sucker at this point. I don't want to calculate out everybody else's values, etc. This game stayed too long. You know, I mean, if you play a game of Monopoly really, really fast, you can probably get it done in about 2 to 3 hours. Takes about 30 minutes for 2-player Monopoly on the computer, as an example. But this game, it overstays it. It takes longer. It takes longer. It is more painful, and there's less decision making. It doesn't have anything magical going for it. It's really so luck dependent. You know, you get fucked early. So like green never had the cash to leverage the loan potential that they had, and just ended up not growing that big. They ended up without a lot of debt, but not in great shape. Red over leveraged, which is something that I think you kind of, I mean, you don't absolutely have to do, but you will fall behind if you don't take those risks. You'll fall behind the other players. You may be playing it safer, but not everyone is going to get hammered. And they got hit with kind of like a string of some bad luck after over leveraging, and just kind of fell into a position where they're in as bad a shape as green, who wasn't able to who didn't over leverage, but also withheld, you know, not by choice, not by choice. You want to take out those loans. You want to get the protection of multiple of anything that you have. What we didn't see a lot of was deal making. I think deal making is the way this game you know, I think if you make deals in this game, you win it. You know, like 2 players could have decided to trade hay for wheat and just said, you know, that's fine, and start with a monocrop really, and focus on that as much as they could. Maybe depending on what their OTBs were. If you don't do that, then, well, you're paying the full cost of the operating expenses every time you hit something that you can harvest when your column's not as good, you know? And you could look and say, well, I would rather have the grain one, honestly. And I think it's true. I think you would rather have the grain. I mean, look at it. It pays double, right? Or more every time you hit it. And you could say, well, there's more options for the hay. In the long run, maybe that makes sense. Maybe bunches and bunches of hay makes sense in the long run because you do have more opportunities to hit them. But in the short run, early in the game, it's better not to hit anything than to hit things that don't make you a lot of money. And that's why the 10 of each sucks. You know, it's a horrible starting position. It's what everybody has. Figure out what your deal is and, you know, hey, if I can convince you that I'll give you 10 acres of hay for 10 acres of wheat, and I'll throw in $200, even though the ground's worth the same to both of us, I think I'm getting the better deal. At what point does it stop being the better deal? I don't know. Anyway, this is going up, and I'm sure anybody who's still watching is probably tickled pink that this shit is done, because there's just nothing interesting to watch in this. And frankly, it's not that interesting to play either. It's a pretty bad game. We'll get to a review.